Hi, my name is Julie McMillan from Silver Birch Studio, and today I'm going to do a walkthrough of my new Gouache Magic brush pack for Procreate. So I've got my iPad and my Apple Pencil. Let's go. Okay, the first brush to show you is the Duo Color Round Opaque brush. And this brush uses two colors at once. So I've got one of the pairs selected from one of the gouache palettes that comes with the pack. It's this color and then this shade here, first pairing. I've got the darker color selected in the circle up here, and I'll show you why. As you press down on this brush, the brush will get larger and the second color will come in. And it will blend the two shades together. Very pressure sensitive brush, as you can see. There's also the Round Opaque, which is the single color version of this brush. So this one, the Round Opaque, has the same pressure sensitivity, but only a single shade. I'm going to zoom in to show you. There's a little bit of a brushy texture to these, not too much, but definitely so that it doesn't look so digital. It doesn't look like a solid color. There's some color variation. You can see it more in the darker color here, but it is in the other one as well. Now the third brush in the set is another Duo Color brush, soft textured. This one has a very soft texture. Duo Color. Let me show you the regular version of the same brush. And then I'll zoom in so that you can see the texture of these. There's definitely a featheriness and a softness to this. There's kind of a wispiness at the edge. It gives a really nice texture to your stroke. The next brush is the Duo Color Brushy Round. This one has a nice brushy texture to the stroke. Again, you blend the colors using pressure. So it goes from one shade to the next and blends the two. The Brushy Round brush does the same thing but with a single color. And let me zoom in so that you can see the texture of these brushes. Get a really nice streakiness and flow to them. Next one is the Duo Color Bristly Round. This one also has a brushy texture to it, but it's a little bit more dry and scratchy. Again, it blends the colors with pressure. And of course, there's a single color version of the same brush. I described this one as bristly rather than brushy. So let me zoom in so you can see the texture. Just a little bit more scratchy. Now the next brush is the Duo Color Grungy. It's got a very sort of rough, grungy texture to it, both inside and outside the stroke. There's also a single color version of this brush. Let me zoom in so that you can see some of the texture. Really gives, grungy was the best word I could come up with, but it really gives a nice amount of texture to your stroke. Fun to play with. Now the next one I call the Deliciously Messy Bristly. And the reason for this is because it really is kind of messy. It's like you've got a very wet, messy old brush and it's very smeary and buildable. So as you can see, that first stroke didn't lay that much down. But as I go over it and build the color up, You can get some really lovely effects. You zoom in so that you can see some of that. And it really does look like wet paint being smeared around on your paper. Okay. The texture brushes continue with the messy old brush. And this again is one that you can build up the stroke if you'd like, adding more color. I'll zoom in so that you can see another messy wet one. Next one is slightly less messy. It's a duo color brush, so it will blend the shades for us. And there's a little bit less mess than the previous brush. It still has that wet smeary effect, but it's slightly less messy. This is another very buildable brush. There's also a single color version of this one. And again, you can see how it lays down the paint in this wet smeary, but not quite as smeary as the messy old one. And then the last brush in this group is the Messy Wet Flat. This is a flat edge brush rather than the other ones, which are more a rounded shape. And this does not lay down much paint with a single stroke, so very buildable. It's also a brush that is laden at the front of the stroke and then loses pigment at the end of the stroke. But you'll see it's got a really nice brush texture to it. So it's a fun one to play with. This next group gets into some drier brushes. This one's called the Duo Color Streaky Dryish. Blends the colors in a very streaky, dry sort of texture. There's a single color version of this brush. Let me zoom in so that you can see the textures on these. Very brushy, very, very textural. And then the Streaky Bone Dry is even drier. This one will be hard to see because it doesn't lay down that much pigment with a single stroke. But the nice thing is it's very buildable. The other thing I like to do with this brush is to layer it over top of itself or another color, another brush, and build it. So as you can see, you get some great texture that way. This one's great to layer over other brushes. Now this next group of brushes gets into some diluted brushes. These are more like when you take your gouache and you water it down some so that it's slightly transparent. This first one's the Duo Color Diluted Rough. It is pressure sensitive. The darker color will come out with less pressure, the secondary color with more pressure. There's a bit of texture on the edge, so I call it rough. And as you can see, it is transparent. You can build this brush up, and it will eventually become opaque by layering, but it's designed to show whatever's under it through, so you can layer your paints this way or you can play with it. There's a single color version of this same one. Again, transparent, has that rough texture, thick to thin with the pressure. Next one is Diluted Smooth. This is similar, but it has a smoother edge. So again, it will blend the colors for you. Definitely transparent, but with a much smoother edge than the rough brushes have. And of course, there's a single color version of this same one. Very pressure sensitive, as all of these are. And here you can see how that line shows through on all of these. Now continuing with the diluted brushes, this one I call the soft diluted buildable. Again, diluted so you can see other things through it, but it's very buildable and it blends nicely. So if you keep going over it, it will eventually become opaque as you layer that color. Gives a really pretty soft effect. Next one, diluted streaky. This one has a streaky texture that runs through it. Again, you can build on this one as you can with all the diluted brushes to make it more opaque. You will lose some of the internal texture as you build up color, but it will still have some of that pretty brushy effect, streaky effect at the edge. Next one is the soft diluted texture brush. Again, plenty of pressure, thick to thin, can be layered, as you can see. And it has quite a soft texture to it, both internally and at the edges of the stroke. The diluted brushy flat is a flat brush that has a nice brushy texture to it. Can definitely be layered, and you'll see the edge of it as you layer the strokes. But internally, it's got that really pretty brushy texture. Now we get into the layering brushes, I call them. We'll start out with the Duo Color Smooth Round Layers. This one has the color variation, the thick to thin, but it's designed let me zoom in so you can see it, so that as you layer the strokes, you see each one. There's a single color version of this same thing. Pressure is thick to thin. And then as you layer the strokes, you'll see each one. Get some really great textures this way. Next one is the Duo Color Brushy Layers. This one has a brushy texture to it. Blends the colors, thick to thin. And then you can lay your strokes one over the other and they'll still be visible. Single color version of the same brush. Zoom in so you can see the texture. So as you layer each stroke, you'll still be able to see some of that brushiness in it and variation in the tone and color. Next, we have two flat brushes in this group, the layering group. Duo Color Brushy Flat Layers, again. Get nice color variation. There isn't as much of a size variation on this one because it's a flat brush, but it does layer beautifully. And you'll see each stroke layered on top of the other. And then of course the next one is the single color version of this brush. Zoom in so that you can see the texture better. And as you can see, you still get that brush texture and variation even when you layer them quite thickly. Now this next group of brushes are actually blending brushes, and we're going to use them under the smudge tool. So the first one is the water blender. This one is a good one. It's just like adding water. Use a very soft pressure, and it will sort of like if you added water to your gouache paint, it would just kind of blend them together. Really pretty, can be used large over a large area, or to do some quite fine blending and quite fine detail. Next blending brush is the soft wet blender. This one let me zoom in. It has a little bit of a water droplet bleed texture to it. So it can be a fun one to play with when you want to add some extra interest as you're blending your colors. Keep in mind that all of these blender brushes can be used at low opacity as well. The soft wet blender can also be used as a brush. And here's what it would look like if you used it as a brush. It gives a very soft texture, almost more watercolory than gouache, but just so that you know you can use it as a brush as well. Going back to blenders, the streaky blender is our next one up. This one will blend pigment in a very streaky sort of way. So it kind of drags the pigment in streaks from one to the other. This is another one that can be used as a brush as well and gives quite a nice effect. Very soft streaks can be nice to layer over pigment that you've already laid down. The next blender brush is the messy blender, the aptly named messy blender, because this kind of blends in an unpredictable, textural, messy way. As you can see there, this is another one that could be used as a brush as well. So I'll show you what that would look like. And again, quite messy. It can be fun for areas that you want to add some extra texture. Back to the smudge tool. And the last blender brush is the soft fluffy blender. And this one, as you might guess, blends in a soft fluffy textural way. I'll zoom in so that you can see that. And this is another one that can be used as a brush as well. The next group is, I guess, a bonus, you would say. I like having all of my brushes that I'm working with in the same folder. So I wanted you to have something that you could do detail and sketching with in this pack without going outside of it. So the first one is a sketching pencil. This one is great for adding detail, for sketching out your designs. I'm using it at quite a large size here just to show you the texture. But I would normally use this at quite a small size just to lay out my design. The next one is the grainy detail. This one's great for doing really gritty, textural, grainy line work, or you can use it for adding detail. I often find myself using this one to add, for instance, the stamen of flowers if I just want something that's very textural and fine. You can use this at larger sizes to add texture on top of something else or on its own. And then the final brush is the soft textured detail one. It's another detailed one, but this one's very soft. Very soft edges, soft centers, soft details all around. Great for when you want to add some detail, but have it be very soft and fluffy. So as you can see when I zoom in, you can see there's a very soft texture to this brush. One of the great bonuses with the Gouache Magic Brush Pack are the duo color palettes that come along with the pack. So you've got 4 different sets of colors here. These are grouped in pairs. You've seen me using this pairing here during the brush demo, but each of these pairs is designed to work really well with the brush pack. Of course, any two colors will work with the duo color brushes, but these are some good samples to get you started with, so I hope you enjoy those. Another great bonus with the Gouache Magic Brush Pack are the 5 different gouache paper textures that come with the pack. When you download these from the zip file, they're a ready-made Procreate document, very simple to use. What I suggest that you do is duplicate the texture that you want to use. That way you've always got a fresh blank one ready to go. When you open up the document, you'll see the paper texture is in a locked layer at the top. Beneath it, there's a paint here layer, and you can go ahead and duplicate this as many times as you would like. And then all you need to do is start painting with your Gouache Magic brushes. Enjoy! If you're familiar with my watercolor magic brush pack, you may find that this one operates very similarly, although of course the final effect is different because it's gouache. But I think you might enjoy it, so please let me know your thoughts if you have any questions, if you've tried it. Love to hear from you. You know the drill. Subscribe, like, comment, do all that good stuff, and I will hopefully see you soon for the next tutorial. Thank you so much for stopping by today, and have a wonderful day.